But as for you, teach what accords with sound doctrine. Show yourself in all respects to be a model of good works, and in your teaching show integrity, dignity, and sound speech that cannot be condemned. With sound doctrine. With sound doctrine. With sound doctrine.
There's still three of us in the studio because Vocab's here. I got Marty Clapp, who we've interviewed before. What's going on, homie? What's up, Marty?
Good to be back with you, Vocab.
Yeah, right there. And he's just chilling in the studio. I'm glad he decided to join us and hang out. And then the main dude we'll be interviewing today is Shawn White. What's going on, Shawn White? How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you got going on, and then we'll talk about the conference. So who is Shawn White besides who he's not?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'll just get into how I got involved in apologetics. I think I got involved in apologetics about 11, 12 years ago. I took a class. At the time, I didn't even know apologetics existed,
right.
But it was on a New Testament reliability. Great class. It was a couple years later I found out, there's a name for this.
Right.
And then I found out shortly after that, hey, you can get a degree in it. And so I went back to school, got my BA in Religious Studies last year.
Cool.
And currently I am at Biola in their Master of Arts Christian Apologetics program.
Right on, man. Right on. And that's I've heard you say good things about it, so I think you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a lot of work, as a grad program ought to be, but
right.
It's a lot of fun, learning a lot, and making a lot of good connections and friends.
I mean, because, you're doing work and your real-life job. You're kind of information technology kind of guy, or is it something different?
No. My daytime job is I am a software programmer, developer. I do web applications, and then go to school, I think, full-time. It feels like full-time.
Right.
And then work on Smart Faith when I should be sleeping, probably.
Right. When I first met you, I thought you said you were a soft drink developer, and I was going to ask you what flavor is root beer.
It's root beer flavor, I would assume.
But you don't know that because you're not a soft drink developer.
That's right. Yeah, I'm just guessing. That's speculation on my part.
Would you know if you were?
No.
No. Hey, Marty, do you know what root beer is? Like, what is, the flavor?
I have no idea.
Jeremy, do you know what root beer flavor? I just want to see if anyone knows. I don't know. It's not a trick.
Yeah, I have no clue. What is it?
I don't know. I'm sure the internet would tell you, but who knows if it would be right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what it's supposed to be. I know that it's supposed to come in those big barrels or something. Like, remember those root beer candies, and they'd be in the shape, and it'd look like it was like a barrel, and you would have root beer flavor. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, those little hard candies. I think they were,
But so I guess it has to come in the barrel. Like, sort of like a keggish type thing. I don't know. I don't know what root beer is. Okay, well, goes good with vanilla. Well, that's all we know about it. So, Shawn, you said you work on Smart Faith when you should be sleeping. What is Smart Faith?
Yeah, it's a apologetics ministry that I started a couple years ago that we, looking around the valley, didn't really see a consistent and apologetic presence in terms of a conference type of thing.
Right.
And so what we wanted to do was to start something like that, and so that we're going into our third annual conference coming up here in June, and our tagline is to help believers become more courageous, confident, and culturally aware.
Now, Marty, you've been to some of these before. Tell our listeners about previous ones and why you might encourage them to go. What'd you get out of them,
I did go to the first two, and I would highly recommend it.
Yeah.
In fact, I got to tell you, I am amazed at what Shawn has been able to do in pulling this together, especially the level of speakers that he brings. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And, I would just encourage everybody, if you miss this, you're really missing out. Yeah. It's well worth even more. It's worth so much more than what it costs to go. It's just a great, very comprehensive training in apologetics from some of the top speakers.
Right.
But I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So,
Really.
I mean, any specific things that you kind of like out of some other ones, like specific little memories or snippets you remember that you particularly liked? Or
Well, it's been a while. I think that the talk that the first year that Brett Kunkel did, as far as what faith is or isn't, and some of the evidences that he gave during his talks. And I think Mary Jo Sharp was at one of the other speakers that first year.
Mm-hmm.
She was good. Yeah, I think that she seemed like she may have covered some of the evidences for the resurrection.
The first year Mary Jo Sharp covered pagan myths.
Oh, that's right.
And
That's
the risen
right.
Christ and stuff like that.
That comes up a lot, yeah.
it was good. I mean, it's nice to really be it's a more intimate setting. I mean, because it's big, there's people there, but it's not overwhelming either. And so you get to talk to some of the guys, some of the gals that do the apologetics. You get to meet other people right here in the Valley in Phoenix, so good connection building. And it's a nice sort of warm, inviting place. You know, you can buy some snacks, you can take a seat, you can take your notes, and everyone's glad to be there. And there's just really good information. So the whole vibe of it, I think, is good too. So people can email you. Is there a phone number you have, or is it mainly through the website?
Through the website.
All right, and I think that's all I need to ask on this segment. When we come back, Shawn, let's have you tell us about some apologetic works that you've been involved with recently at Northern Arizona University. That'll be exciting.
Sound Doctrine. Sound Doctrine.
So, Shawn, what's up with you, man? Not only do you go to school and promote and organize the conference and all of that, but, man, you're actually doing this in real-life venues, such as recently talking about the resurrection, I believe, up at NAU. What's going down? Tell us a little bit about those stories and what your experience was.
Yeah, I don't even know how that whole connection with NAU came about, but I was emailed by the student campus minister up there who works at NAU, and he asked if I wanted to come up and do a presentation on the resurrection, which I was all for, since that's my favorite
It's
subject.
sort of your specialty.
It is, man.
Yeah.
I love that topic. We could talk about that all day. I'll run out your time.
Right.
But no, he contacted me a few months back and asked me to come up and speak. So I put together a presentation for him, and we went up, and it was on April 1st we did that. It was really good. We had probably about 48 people show up, and about five or so were skeptics.
Right.
I did about a 90-minute presentation on the resurrection, looking at the facts of the resurrection and looking at some of the common naturalistic theories and why they don't hold up to the facts.
Right.
And then to close out, we had about a 30 to 40-minute Q&A session with the audience there. And then, I got to talk a little bit to some of them afterwards. And the campus minister, I talked to him since, and he said that he's been able to make some connections and getting some dialogues with some people.
Yeah, so, I mean, do you have a general idea of the feedback from that? I mean, because that was I think your first time doing that kind of thing in that kind of setting, right?
Well, it was my second time on a university campus, my first time on a secular campus. Right. Last fall I did a similar presentation, but from a different method of presenting the material.
How'd that go? That was at Arizona Christian University, right? How'd that go?
Yeah, that went pretty well. I think we had about 50 or 60 show up there and about 3 professors, and that went pretty well. And that was about an hour long. We didn't have time for a formal Q&A session, but I hung around and we had some good conversations as well.
That's pretty cool, man. And at your church, you've done a lot of teaching. What about those classes?
Yeah, I'm teaching almost on a weekly basis at church, either on some apologetic topic. And right now, instead of trying to confine it to Sunday or Wednesday, I do a Thursday night session from 7 to 8 every Thursday called Investigate Christianity.
That sounds good, man. We're going to have to pray for you to get some sleep. We'll be back in a minute. Shawn White, BPR.
Sound Doctrine.
Tell us a little bit about Cross-Examine and what's up with all of that.
Yeah, Cross-Examined is a apologetics ministry that's run by Dr. Frank Turek out in Charlotte, North Carolina. This August will be the 7th year that he's put this on. I've been to about 3 of these trainings, and they're really good. They're about 3 days long. You essentially go out to Charlotte. You go through his material in his book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And from there, they also cover a few other topics, but typical instructors out there is Frank Turek himself, Greg Koukl, Brett Kunkel, and a couple of others. And what it's really, this training, what it really tries to do, though, is prep you, not necessarily on Frank's material, although that's what we cover, but on public speaking just in general. And so you have 2 to 3 different opportunities to prepare a talk on some apologetic material, and you're kind of free to choose what you want. And then they break you up in small groups, and you get assigned to like a Greg Koukl or a Frank Turek or a Brett Kunkel, and you do about a 10 to 15 minute presentation, and then your peers critique you, and then one of those mentors critiques you as well and gives you feedback, and then you come back the next day and you have the opportunity to do it again. And so you do that about 2 or 3 times, and it's good. It's good training.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I mean, there's all kinds of ways now for people to get trained other than maybe some of the traditional means, which, were good too, but it's good because there's really no excuse anymore for us not to do it.
Yeah, there's so much information available.
Speaking of Frank Turek, to put a plug in for his book, I don't know if you've mentioned it on your program before, but I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. That is a great book.
Yeah, with a co-author with Geisler there.
Yeah. I'm actually, I just started this last Sunday in the teens Sunday school class, taking them through that material.
Cool.
So for the next 13 weeks.
Well, no doubt. Now, I wanted to try to do this if we could. Let's 3 of us together, Marty, Shawn, myself, Vocab, let's respond to a critique. We can't read the whole thing, but we'll read what we can. And I kind of want to get mainly you guys to say something about it. We did a show back in actually December of 2010, so it's a while. But, hey, it's still relevant because it's called Truth, what it looked like. And so to understand what this guy's talking about, go check out the show. But let me just begin reading what he said. This is what he labeled responsa. That's sort of a technical title there. And it says this: your panel says the biblical view of truth, quote, is the only source of truth while mocking the ramblings and fumblings of people trying to define truth. Fair enough. We played some clips from the Truth Project where people are trying to define truth, and it's not very flattering, but it's kind of like the common everyday what people say truth is or isn't. Then you claim that God is always truth, quote. Well, then how do you deal with biblical morality and ethics that are not palatable or followed by modern Christians? History shows us quite clearly that this truth is really quite mutable from era to era. Is it not better than to say that God is sometimes truth? Any comments on anything he said so far, guys?
I just think it's interesting that he says it's not palatable. I don't know. I don't know when truth has to be palatable, right?
See, that's a good point. Anything else, Marty?
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, I like it. Just kind of do the little bullet, kind of quick quip. That's just like that. That's perfect. That's why I'm glad I have you guys here. Then Pastor Bob says that there are, quote, quote, things we can know truly about God, end quote. Like what? Then you all agree that there is, quote, sufficient knowledge of God and truth, such as? All of these are just assertions. You give no evidence or examples of these claims. In fact, they're only premises and presuppositions, using in this discussion Paul's letter to the Romans as a proof text. But these issues of truth are not self-evident, objectively or subjectively, unless one is infected with the God virus. See Darrell Ray's interesting atheist treatise on this, or has learned the behavior, rhetoric, and sophistic tactics of Christian apologetics.
Wow.
Give a response on that.
I'm not sure where to begin with that.
Any quick one?
I think that one thing that comes to mind is that God has to be the foundation of all knowledge and all thinking. And I know that seems like a it just seems like I'm leaping over a lot of things there. But even I believe it was C.S. Lewis that I wish I had the quote in front of me. It's beautiful, where he talks about the fact that if your brain is just the collocation of atoms, if it's just matter, just obeying the laws of physics and chemistry, or as one guy put it, if it's just like soda reacting with vinegar, if it just does what it does and it can't do otherwise, how can you make sense of logic or reason or to learn anything?
Yeah, God's the only game in town, ladies and gentlemen. And, Victor Reppert, another local professor, has a book that deals with C.S. Lewis' argument from reason, and we actually did a show on that too. So that was good. All right, let me read this one. This is going to get kind of long. It is the height of hypocrisy, not to mention that of intellectual dishonesty, to tout and celebrate biblical truth, which undeniably implies Bible in toto, as the only legitimate definition of truth, as you do in this podcast, and then, without any embarrassment, proceed to explain away or ignore such modern distasteful moral codes as, say, death penalty for adulterers, which I suspect your church does not promote. More significantly, though, it betrays the game, replete with the shifting man-made rules per historical situation or era that is Christian apologetics. Modern Christianity and the discipline of apologetics are basically trick decks of cards employed to maintain an unreasonable and fanciful word of meaning, and one grounded in some sort of capital T truth, which itself is also part of the game being played, that is encased in an ancient set of documents which are demonstrably irrelevant to our era. To be sure, everything in life is not an all-or-nothing deal, but when one claims that the Christian Bible enshrines truth, it is beyond disingenuous to then limit the ramifications of this so-called truth by cherry-picking only what is amenable to modern American society or to your own communal liking. The preposterous rhetorical maneuver is therefore worthy of scorn and ridicule, non credo quia absurdum est. This is a real letter from a real dude that we got, and that's why I wanted to read it. I thought this would be the good show to do it.
Did he help Dawkins write the first paragraph to the God Delusion?
Yeah, did he consult the thesaurus with them? I mean, comments on that. I mean, dude's smart. Obviously, there's some serious rhetorical flourish up in this piece.
I think it's interesting because earlier in one of the other parts that you read, he talked about how we just I don't want to put words in his mouth, but essentially that we're just blindly asserting things and true. But I haven't heard any justification for I mean, are we to take what he's saying is true, and what sorts of justification is he giving for us to believe that? Right.
It sounds sort of like he's has his own authority and he thinks that's sufficient.
Right. And why should I take his authority on it?
Let's continue. Christian apologists, of course, do not recognize the dishonesty and or trickery intrinsic to this game. In fact, they have legitimized its nonsensical rules and wishful thinking in order to uphold the delusion that is a Christian worldview. In short, it is a game they can never lose. For this reason, among others, non-theists and non-religionists refrain from even entering or engaging the game in the first place. And this refusal to play, I submit, riles Christians more than just about anything, which is one reason why atheists are more hated than homosexuals or witches or Muslims. We non-theists recognize not only the game, but the rules of the game as man-made and pointless, and we have better things to do with our time, energy, thought, and life. Moreover, we refuse to become complicit in the harmful and immoral nature of the game, for although this game is structurally not unlike the Tooth Fairy, which is arguably harmless myth-making for children, the Christian game is dangerous and repressive, to say the least.
Wow, even the end of that, dangerous and repressive. And he opened earlier with a comment, it's the height of hypocrisy. What do you hear all throughout this letter is an appeal to objective morality.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you got some of that going on in there, right?
Yeah, and then he compares it there at the end to, likens it to a tooth fairy. Well, we don't have any good evidence for tooth fairy, right?
Right.
Well, we have good evidence for God.
Yes. I tried to get this guy to come on the show, by the way. He didn't want to because he said he didn't want to play the game. In summation...
But he'll write a letter.
Right. He said, just read my letter on the air.
Wow.
In summation of this segment of the podcast, I must say that I am always perplexed with how Christian apologists are so obsessed with ultimate definition of truth. Why not simply face the threat of anami, honestly and squarely with the rest of us without constructing and then expending huge amounts of time and energy defending a fantastic and unsustainable system of meaning, religion. After all, the mass of men cannot ultimately define gravity or love, for instance, yet we all live with it and in it every day. Truth is an ideal, and a man-made one at that. What is so difficult about this to grasp? If the fear of loss of community along with meaning, then there's plenty of communities, even reality-defying ones, to join.
Yeah, that's great. So truth isn't objective except for, I think Marty hit it on the head, right? Truth not objective, but yet he's using it as if it were.
Yes, let me read one more line, and then if you got a response for this one's brief. An aside, have you ever wondered why the discipline of apologetics is even needed if Christianity or the Christian worldview is so true, or if biblical thought is really self-evident truth? Is it not vanity of vanities, or just fighting a losing battle?
He's providing his own apologetic, right?
Right.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Right, so I figured that's a good place to leave. But thank you for the listener feedback. We do appreciate it, and I actually wish I could write like this guy. And appreciate the time and thought he put into it. Actually, we're only halfway done with the letter, so maybe we'll get to pick it up on another time. Thank you for coming on, Shawn. You've been a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And you too, Marty.